Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you, Tyler. Would have expected a little bit more gamesmanship, but then again, Drinkwitz said it in his press conference too. They've seen Doty. It was a guy that he's familiar with as well. So, Missouri was going to be prepared for either one. I think, you're preparing a little bit more so for Sellers just based on the things that he can do with his feet, and then also the dynamic ability with the arm. So we'll have to see. But again, I think the probable bump, should give a lot of fans quite a bit of hope.
Well, I think it goes without saying that this team's best opportunity to win tomorrow comes with 16 playing quarterback, and that's not disrespectful to Doty or Noland or Cutter or right. Jimmy Francis or Brandon Cunningham or whoever the heck would be taking snaps, but Sellers is special for a reason, and you need him at the helm if you're going to win a game as tricky as this one tends to be for South Carolina.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. You want your leader back at the helm again. This offense has taken their lumps. Last week was, one of their worst performances, as of late again. And so, this offense has a lot of lessons to take from, that game into this one. A lot of things to change up. And so you want the guy that's been at the helm, the one who, took the ding, if you will, to be the one to fix it, right? To re-swing momentum, into the positive fashion for South Carolina.
And it's interesting. I was going back and looking at Sellers' numbers from last year, because, again, he hasn't played a true road game this year. I'm not going to count, the game that they played in Atlanta against Virginia Tech. But, a lot of quarterbacks, you'll see a pretty big discrepancy in terms of how they play at home versus on the road. But Sellers' numbers are actually pretty even across the board. Let's go back to last year. At home, was completing about 62% of his passes, 10 touchdowns, 4 picks. On the road, even better actually passing, where he had 69% completions, 8 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. And the rushing stats tell a pretty similar story there. Rushing yards down a little bit, but attempts were down a little bit on the road in neutral sites as well. So he's a quarterback that, again, not everybody can say this, is pretty balanced with how he plays on the road and at home. And, again, you're going into an environment in Mizzou that has not treated South Carolina well over the years.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. And, Missouri's kind of been brewing towards this for, a football atmosphere long gone are the days where nobody's on that hill. That place is going to be packed and rocking. Luckily, 16 has seen, worse environments, better environments than that. On the road, had to go into Bryant-Denny and try to get one done. Wasn't able to get it done there. But, this kid is a competitor, and I think, the lumps that they took last week against Vandy, probably got lost in all the frustrations and everything that they took. So it'll be a good little reset for 16 in this offense if they can get one done up there in Como.
Well, and as we like to talk about so much, just when you really start to doubt a Beamer-led team, that's typically when they go out there and pull off a surprise victory or a surprise performance that people didn't necessarily see coming. Of course, the Tennessee game is most famous example of that, after you just completely got boat raced by to just a 500 Florida team a couple years ago. Last year you get run over by Ole Miss, and I know you didn't win against Alabama, but you were a 2-point try away from, winning that game potentially out there in Tuscaloosa. So, again, the blueprint's kind of setting up once again, where we looked at a pretty egregiously bad home loss last week to Vanderbilt, saying, I don't know, man, this team, they may not be half of what last year's team was. This seems like the perfect opportunity for them to go out there and pull off a victory. We say, okay, wow, didn't mean to doubt them.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Again, and this is a game that's slowly turning into a little rivalry, I guess. Missouri's had your numbers until last year, where you were able to, flip the switch, if you will, on the rivalry at your own at home at Williams-Brice after a hard-fought game. You wonder if Lenore Sellers is a competitor. Watch the final drive of that game. I mean, he was able to get it done, drive the team down the field with limited timeouts and whatnot, and then obviously the punch into Rocket Sanders for the score and the win there. Huge stuff. Again, this would be a big game, and for South Carolina to take in terms of momentum. It would essentially regain a lot of the momentum that you lost with Vandy, maybe even all of it right back. I don't know. It'd be too early to say with that. You still got to keep winning, but it would be a huge swing in the right direction and getting the train right back on track for South Carolina.
On the other side of this quarterback situation, you have Bo Pribula with Missouri, and this is a name that we've heard a lot over the past couple of years, of course, from his time at Penn State, playing that situational quarterback role, short yardage, goal line type of stuff, kind of like their version of Tebow back when Chris Leak was the starting quarterback back at Florida at that first Urban Meyer national championship team, and he played that role really well. But he comes in here to Missouri. And let's not forget about this. He was not guaranteed the starting spot when the season began. It was still an open competition going into game number 1 between him and Sam Horn. Sam Horn quite literally got hurt on his first play against Central Arkansas in game number 1. Out for, I don't know if he's out for the season, but he's out for a while, and that handed the keys over to Bo Perbula, and credit to him, he's played really well through these first couple of weeks of the season, but still, I don't feel like we know everything about this guy just yet.
Yeah, absolutely not, Tyler. Guy they're certainly excited about up there in Como based on the things that he's already been doing for him, but still, the jury's still out on him. And, I think Clayton White's defense is going to be his first real test. It's the first real defense he'll see in college football. This defense had a couple things that they can change up going into this week, from last week, a couple discipline things, tackling, eye discipline. They'll have a big test with this Missouri offense and Bo Perbula, but again, I still favor the South Carolina defense when it comes to the matchup of those two units.
One element of this that I think is really important to note, and look, Ahmad Hardy is the primary part of the scouting report when you talk about Missouri for how he's run so far this year, his ability to break tackles, yards after contact, all that kind of stuff. But again, I said a moment ago, Bo Perbula was a running quarterback when he was at Penn State, and a lot of design run type of plays, zone gap runs, those kind of things. And that hasn't really been the case. He's used his feet a little bit at Missouri so far this year, but it's not been on a lot of design runs, mainly been on scrambles. So I do wonder if that's something that Kirby Moore, their OC, might be holding in his back pocket. And Wes brought up a really good point in the last hour. There's also probably the element of, hey, we lost one of our 2 quarterbacks to injury early in the season when he got hit. We want to lower that risk as much as possible, though, as you get into a game like this against South Carolina where it could be very, nip and tuck back and forth all the way down to the end, you're going to need to pull out all stops if you want to win that. So we could see that element of the offense open up a little bit more with Perbula, even though we haven't seen that so far this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Going to be another test. It's not like South Carolina, like they weren't ready for it against Vanderbilt, the eye discipline and everything. We saw that. So this is ever more reason to be ready for anything for this defense and to be locked in on your keys, right? When you're expecting a little bit more complicated offense, they're still going to run the football like they normally do, try to get downfield with that zone running game and, kind of turn the clock out, limit possessions. But when you have a quarterback, like you said, Tyler, that's capable of running the football and they haven't really showed it yet, you got to be ready for anything. And I think this Clayton White defense is, leaving no stone unturned, or you have to be, going up this week into Como.
And there are certainly a lot of similarities between what Vanderbilt did last week and what you're going to see this week with that outside zone running scheme, to where they are going to try and get you in space and force you to tackle them in open space, which, again, Carolina struggled with a week ago. So this is, again, where you kind of have to put your faith in Clayton White, the assistants and all that kind of stuff that, I don't know, they put the fear of God in these guys for their poor performance last week, and you see something better this week. Because, again, if you told me right now that Carolina misses 10 tackles tomorrow on defense, I'd say, all right, I already know how this game's going to go.
Yeah, pretty much. You can't miss tackles, and I guess lucky for them, Tyler, it's not like it's something that they can fix, right? Just more discipline on tackling. I mean, a lot of times in that Vanderbilt game, they were in the right position, right? The eye discipline, the rolls, the keys, everything was keyed in, but they just couldn't finish the play. It's something Elijah mentioned on the walkthrough this week. Was they have to finish plays. And I think this defense is capable of it. You see their positioning's good, and they've shown ferocity within these first 2 weeks. So just have to go back and tap into it and tap into what makes them so good.
We'll take a look at some of the underrated aspects of this Missouri team coming up next, as we continue on with Halftime Show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, getting you set for a football weekend on your Football Friday here on The Game.
think we get it every week in practice, going against our own defense, which is also a really good third down defense. We've done it all through fall camp, and we continue to do so, during the season. I think just staying on top of that, and Coach Moore and all of the offensive coaches come up with a really good game plan each week on third down. Just finding different ways to, expose the defense's third down game plan. I think it just makes it easier for us to execute.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika from The Walkthrough, and Captain Dave hanging out with you on your Football Friday. That was the voice of the aforementioned Bo Perbula, who, of course, is the quarterback for Missouri ahead of tomorrow night's matchup, talking about how good they are on third downs, Joe, and it's scary how good they are. 62% conversion through the first 3 games of the season. They hold on to the ball better than just about anybody in the nation. They're best in the SEC in total time of possession so far this year. And, when you can't get a team off the field on third downs, that's how you end up giving up long, sustained scoring drives like Missouri is so good at doing.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. You're going to have to win third down. Such a big thing in this game of football. And, again, Missouri's really, really good at staying on the field. Bo Perbula talking about it there in that little soundbite. They sounds like they put a lot of extra effort into, third downs and converting and staying on the field, giving their defense a break. So it's going to be, big for, South Carolina's offense to convert and stay on the field, one thing, but two, South Carolina's defense to make the plays on third down. It's been a trade of when Clayton White's defenses are good, they're making plays on third down and usually, forcing a turnover while they're at it. So, I think it's just going to be a big test for this defense. We'll have to see.
Well, and just as importantly as winning on third down is winning on first and second down as well. So they're not set up in these advantageous spots to take advantage on third down. I thought it was interesting looking deeper into the numbers here. Missouri's average yards to go on third down this year is 5.2. So they're averaging about a 3rd and 5 every time they get into those scenarios. However, when they've been in situations of 3rd and 9 or more, which has been 9 times this year, they've not converted a single one of those. So again, when they're in 3rd and medium, 3rd and short, money, especially with the run game like Missouri has, where you feel comfortable heading it off to Ahmad Hardy on a 3rd and 3 or whatever. When you get into a 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, you're a lot more limited. So, again, this goes back to Carolina being able to win those first couple of downs to make sure Missouri is in a less than advantageous spot when it comes to third down.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Again, this defense needs to be really, really, really keyed in on their run game because, they're going to have to stop it and, force, less than yards for gain and 1 or 2 yards gained on this run game because, again, like you mentioned, Tyler, not very good when they have a lot of ways to go. So, it's going to be key to stopping this run game on first, second down before they get intuitive on third. And, on third down, if they got a little bit more ways to go, again, more opportunity for those tip balls, deflections, and, those can lead to turnovers as well sometimes.
I think one of the most important battles in this game, because you're always going to look at the trenches, right? And trenches are very important, and we feel comfortable with what South Carolina has from a pass rush standpoint on the outside when it comes to the edges. But when you look at Missouri, their biggest struggle in terms of pass blocking comes from the interior of their offensive line. So the interior, the 2 guards in the center, have surrendered 11 pressures so far this year. 7 sacks in total, but most of that pressure comes up the middle, comes from the interior. And I don't doubt the fact that Dylan Stewart or Brian Thomas Jr. can get home coming from the outside, but I look at this as a game where Nick Barrett, Monkel Goodwin, Gabriel Brownlow-Dinley could have a really profound effect in this pass rush game by being able to take advantage of the weakness of that Missouri offensive line.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. The front seven's going to have to be key, especially the defensive line. Again, we'll have to see if the officials are, calling everything on, Dylan Stewart. I know that's been a complaint this week and kind of leading up to it. The kid can't let his frustrations get to him. And I think they're, this is the development of a young player of Dylan Stewart, like we were talking about yesterday. But again, I think that the front seven needs to be hungry and aggressive on run game. Because if you can stop the run, you don't know what can happen on that third down. Like big third downs are where crazy things happen. And then if you have Missouri in a tough spot, they're gonna try to force some things. And we've seen what this defense is capable capable of doing when the other team is forcing the ball and trying to making mistakes. So, just have to be disciplined, have to stand on business, and then the mistakes will force themselves, basically.
I'm glad you brought up the part about Dylan Stewart, who last week was probably held a few times when it didn't end up getting called, and it was part of the reason that led to the frustration that may have resulted in how we ended up getting ejected from the game at the end for the personal, foul penalty. If I'm Missouri, aren't I trying to push this as far as I can? Like, see what you can get away with. See how much holding you can have against this guy. Because, again, your MO on offense, if you're Missouri, is to make sure that this guy doesn't wreck your game. And I imagine they're going to be running a lot of stuff to the left, going the opposite side of the field on him. And maybe Bo Perbula is just trying to get off some quicker throws to ensure that Dylan Stewart doesn't have time to get there and have that kind of effect. But again, I watched the tape last week. I saw this guy get frustrated. I saw this guy make a mistake that hurt himself and got himself kicked out of the game. So, yeah, if I'm a Missouri offensive lineman, I'm trying to see if I can stir that pot as much as I can tomorrow and see if I can get him to take himself out of the game too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this South Carolina, coaching staff and even the players around him, Brian Thomas Jr. was talking about it, even post-game on, they were working with him. It's like, hey, you can't let, the frustrations get to you, let the frustrations out, let your play do the talking. But it is frustrating, obviously, when you're getting held a lot more and it's not getting called. You would think Dylan Stewart would be in the spot where he'd be getting some superstar calls, but I don't know. I guess it must be a bad rap or something. But these refs certainly need to figure it out. And I think if Missouri's going after him early, like these refs are going to pay attention because, the poor kid can only go through so much of it. And, I don't know how you can't see it's just his frustrations pouring out. And again, he does have to have a lid on it because they will throw the flag. But again, you also can't tell him to tone back, the aggressiveness and what makes him so ferocious on the edge.
One aspect of this game, and again, we always look out for this because Carolina has such a good history with it, is the special teams, I think, could become the most important part of this game. Once again, in a lot of ways, given the fact that I think it is going to be a pretty close battle between two teams that are probably, in a lot of people's minds, pretty evenly matched. But you look at some of the numbers when it comes to the special team side of things, when it comes to Missouri, and I see advantages for South Carolina. Missouri's only had 42% of their kickoffs go to touchbacks, which is second worst in the SEC. Boom, there's an opportunity for Nick Harbor to make something happen in the return game. And they also have the worst average punt return yards for opponents with 21 on the average per punt return. And again, we'd all love to see Vakari Swing go out there and return another touchdown or return another punt for a touchdown. But even if he doesn't do that, if he can flip the field and give you, 10, 15, maybe 20 yards on a punt return, that could help out your offense tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. Special teams, special players, Tyler. Vakari Swain is one of those guys, really talented. And, again, I expect, this South Carolina team has shown that they're dynamic on special teams all year long. You need the field goal kicking to be a little bit better, more consistent. But Mason Love has been great punting the football. And then, obviously, Vakari Swain with his returns and whatnot. I would expect South Carolina to try to break the game open with special teams one way, shape, or form. It's the identity of this team. And so, you need a little bit of special teams magic to get a win like this, right?
And when you look at their kicking situation, one of their kickers, Blake Craig, is listed as out on their availability report as recently as last night. Robert Meyer, true freshman, has been doing the most of the kicking this year. He's 3 for 3 with a long of 25 on short-range field goals, 0 for 1 past 25 yards in attempt. Did also have an extra point blocked against Kansas as well a couple of weeks ago. And I would look at that normally and say, wow, massive advantage to South Carolina. But at the same time, Carolina hasn't proven its acumen on kicking either. We've had William Joyce miss a couple field goals. We've had Mason Love come in last week and attempt a long field goal, which he also missed. Like, there's not been enough consistency in this kicking game to make me feel like Carolina has an advantage in that way. You could see both teams maybe attempting a lot of fourth downs in opponents' territory because they don't quite have faith in their kickers just yet.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Field goal kicking battle, again, it's going to be interesting. When teams are going for it on fourth down, it's very college football-esque, and it kind of adds to the excitement of the sport, too. So as questionable as it is, I'm here for it. I don't know. It's kind of the oddball take here, but I think it adds to the excitement, and you never want to be going for fourth down in your opponent's territory. Ideally, you're converting on that first, second, or third down, but I don't know, Tyler. I'm with it, and hopefully, again, I would think Shane Beamer and South Carolina are going to try. Like if they're anywhere in opponent's territory, going to try a field goal, but anywhere outside 45, maybe 50 yards, like you're going to be going for it.
We'll see how much of a factor that plays in the game coming up tomorrow. As we do each and every Friday at 12:30, we talk to our guy Brian Edwards of Vegas Insider to see what the lines look like for this weekend. Do that coming up next. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Football Friday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Halftime Show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Ed along with you here on your Football Friday on the Game. Time to talk some lines for the weekend with our guy Brian Edwards of Vegas Insider. Join me now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Brian, appreciate the time as always. How are we doing today, man?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Let's start things off. Looking at the game, we're all focused on that being South Carolina and Missouri. Of course, given Lenore Sellers' injury status being unknown for a lot of the week, this line has moved around quite a bit. It has come down a little bit in the past day or so with the status of him looking more and more likely. You're looking at that as well as the team total for this game as well.
Yeah, so the look-ahead line, at least last Friday, was either 3 or 3.5. At FanDuel, it was one of those, and it was 3.5 at the other. I forget which, out of DraftKings. And then Sunday morning, I wake up, and FanDuel had Mizzou -7. And obviously, later in the day, as we, got more information that, we suspected he had a concussion, but anyhow, it comes out at 13, the 13.5 Monday morning, and then as the week progressed, it came down a little bit, and I think it was Wednesday when Beamer, said he'd made some progress, and then last night we see on the injury report that he's probable, so it's down to 9.5 now. I like Missouri's team total. I had it last week. We talked about it going over 37.5. They had 38 by halftime. I, again, like it this week. I've seen it anywhere from 28.5 to 29.5. Missouri right now has scored 52, 42, and 61 to date, but this will be the best defense they've faced. But right now they're 8th nationally in scoring with 51.7 points per game average. Prabula's playing great. Ahmad Hardy, second in the country in rushing yards with 462. So I'm going to go Missouri's team total over 29.5. I'm also playing them -6.5 in the first half. And I took Ahmad Hardy's rushing yards prop over 88.5. I did like how Faison got the ball more last week. I think South Carolina needs to continue to do that. But the offense obviously struggling. I mean, didn't have Sellers for more than half the game last week. But, a couple of plays on Mizzou this week.
A lot of intriguing games going on around college football. One of the most interesting ones is the battle between Illinois and Indiana, two programs that 5 years ago I don't think we'd be talking about them playing one of the most important games, not only of the week but of the season against each other. But here they are, both ranked. Obviously, Indiana making the playoff a year ago. A lot of people think Illinois has the opportunity to be that kind of team coming up this year, though they are going on the road, taking on Indiana. But you like the Illini in this one.
I do, and it's my first time going against Kurt Cignetti since he's been in Indiana. I mean, obviously it's only his second year, but I was on Indiana on a pretty much weekly basis last year with a lot of success. So I'm going against him. Maybe I'm playing with fire. But look, Illinois, 16 games as a road underdog during Brett Bielema's 5-year tenure. They're 12-4 against the spread. His QB Luke Altmaier is playing fantastic. 8 touchdown passes without an interception to date. And I just really think it's a toss-up game in terms of who wins outright. So, I liked it at +4 on Monday morning. I obviously like it now at +6.5. And if your number is 6.5, and again, if it's 6, that's fine. Still like Illinois. But if it's 6.5, I'd try to buy the half point at the key number of 7. I'm on the Illini.
Let's take a look at some games going on in the Big 12. Baylor and Arizona State squaring off, two teams that when they face quality competition, Baylor's case taking on Auburn and Arizona's case taken on Mississippi State a couple weeks ago. They've both fallen short. Of course, Arizona trying to back up their college football playoff appearance from a year ago, and maybe the surprise to some people, Baylor is the slight favorite in this one.
Yeah, ASU has just not looked like the same team that made the CFP last year. And, I'm sure Cam Scadaboo's absence has a lot to do with that. He was a major part of their production and, the heart and soul of that team last season. On the Baylor side, like you noted, got beat by Auburn, but they did have a nice bounce-back win at SMU. And Sawyer Robertson, their QB, is playing really good. He's second in the nation in passing yards with 1,070. Has got a 10-2 PDI&T ratio, but both of those picks were against the FCS opponent last week, and they had a pretty easy game last week coming into this one. They're at home. I like Baylor minus 2.5. I would like it all the way up to 3. Give me the Bears.
Again, talking to Brian Edwards, the Vegas Insider, looking at some numbers ahead of another full weekend of football action across college and the NFL. Sticking with the Big 12 here, we've talked a lot in the offseason about Texas Tech, what they've spent in the transfer portal, all this talent that they've brought in, kind of being the poster child for what NIL can do for a program that hasn't had a lot of success as of late. Taking on a gritty, always tough Utah team led by Kyle Whittingham that I think most people saw them against UCLA a couple weeks ago, and we know that win's not very impressive because UCLA is going to be terrible this year. But the Utes, the slight favorite, taking on the Red Raiders.
Yeah, so smaller opinion here because I've got a lot of respect for Texas Tech. Both these teams are playing fantastic here in the early going. And I will point out, I got Utah at -3. It looks like there's still a 3 at Circa, albeit at a -120 price, and the South Point in Vegas. But most books have moved to 3.5. I guess that happened late last night or early this morning. So it's got to be at 3 for me on this. Look, Utah, last 2 years, tough situation. Seemed like Cam Rising was questionable, like 20 games in a row, and they just didn't have a plan outside of him, and unfortunately, he was injured. And now they've got a quarterback. Dampier was the first team All-Mountain West, playing for New Mexico last year, and I like Utah -3 at home, laying the short number, but again, it's got to be 3, and make this a smaller opinion amount-wise compared to my other college plays.
Couple more minutes here with Brian Edwards, the Vegas Insider. Let's spin over to the NFL. This is a tricky one because you're dealing with 2 backup quarterbacks, but you have the Bengals taking on the Vikings. Of course, Joe Burrow going to be out for a while with his turf toe injury. Jake Browning taking over at quarterback there. And then the Vikings announcing earlier on this week that McCarthy's going to be out for a while. And Carson Wentz, yes, he's still around. Carson Wentz taking over at the helm for Minnesota. I think a lot of people would steer away from a game like this, but you like the Bengals in this matchup.
I sure do, and the reason is the Bengals are healthier. Obviously, both teams with backup QBs, as you just noted, but Aaron Jones, stud running back for the Vikings, he's out. Their veteran starting center, Ryan Kelly, is also out. They've got 3 starters on defense that are very questionable. We'll know more about them, probably in the next hour or so. But look, the Bengals believe in Jake Browning, and even though he had thrown 3 interceptions last week, at crunch time, he still orchestrated a 15-play, 92-yard drive. And when Burrow was hurt in November and December of 2 seasons ago, 2023, Browning came in and posted a 4-3 record for them. And with the 2-0 record, this team, still feels, and rightly so, feels that they can be a playoff team and hopefully get Burrow back in mid to late December. So I'm going to go with the Bengals +3. I think they went outright. It wasn't like Minnesota's offense was thriving with McCarthy. Other than the fourth quarter against the Bears, they had done nothing all year, and I think they'll struggle with Carson Wentz. And I think the Bengals' defense has looked a lot better than I expected so far.
One more here before we let you go. Eagles, they face yet another challenging opponent to start the season, going to be taking on the Rams. They are the favorite in this matchup, but a lot of different elements of this game that you're looking at in terms of props.
Yeah, I'm going with Jalen Hurts, anytime touchdown. Hopefully you can get a cheaper price than -140, but I would go all the way up to -150 and play it. He scored in 5 games in a row going back to last year. I also got the Eagles -3 at a -120 price Monday morning. Now, most books have been at 3.5 since Tuesday. If you can't get 3, that kind of changes it for me. And since I'm saying that, and if you can't get 3, let me throw another pick your way. I like the Texans +2 at the Jags. They've won 7 in a row in Jacksonville, and they've won 12 of the last 14 between those AFC South rivals. And a couple more that I added since I DM'd you the other day. I'm also going with Auburn, Oklahoma over 46.5, and Arkansas, Memphis over 61.
Sounds good, man. We appreciate it as always, and I believe next week we'll finally have Bill back in here to be able to join in on this conversation too.
Stoked to hear that. I can't wait to talk to him. Glad he's doing better, and you guys have a great weekend. Thanks.
Absolutely. You too. Brian Edwards there, Vegas Insider. We'll come back. We'll wrap up hour number 1 of the halftime show. Florida, once again on the national stage. To get embarrassed again? We'll see. We'll talk about it next to wrap up the hour. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. By the way, your next chance to win possibly $1,000 in our national cash contest coming up in mere moments. Be listening out for that keyword and text it to 95819 in just a second here on the Halftime Show on the Game.
very challenging in a lot of different ways. They've been playing elite defense for several games, dating back to last season. And offensively, they've been very close on several occasions to having some great performances. So it's very clear they're an extremely talented team. They're well coached. They play hard. And for us, a great opportunity.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, along with you here on your Football Friday on the Game. That was the voice of Mario Cristobal, head coach of the the Miami Hurricanes, as they get set to take on a struggling Florida Gators team. Is that a fair way to describe what's going on down in Gainesville right now, Joe?
Yeah, struggling might be an understatement. Off the rails with no hope last time is probably how you can phrase it. I don't know why game day's there, to be honest, Tyler. Like, just because of the state of this Florida program. It
would have made more sense to go to Indiana, Illinois, probably.
Most definitely. Again, especially knowing how many cupcakes the Big Ten schedule's on. It's a marquee matchup for them at this point. But yeah, I don't know. Florida is all like Billy Napier is going to get fired. Like, I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts about it unless he, goes wins out. But I don't know. I feel like he's lost the locker room at this point. Yeah.
And here's my thing, and I agree with you. I think this is last year down there in Gainesville, though we did say the same thing last year, and he did enough to save his butt by beating teams like LSU and Ole Miss down the stretch there. If you're a Florida fan, do you want to see this team win this game tomorrow? Or are you to the point where, look, we've all been in positions with our professional sports teams and maybe even with your college teams as well, where you're like, look, even if they salvage something out of this, I know the future looks very bleak. I want this guy gone. I'm rooting against my own team until he is gone because I feel like a lot of Florida fans are there.
Yeah, and Florida's one of those fan bases where you can see the fans kind of doing that, if you will. I don't know if you can call it a good fan base, but the Swamp is certainly electric when it gets going. But yeah, it's a big brand, Florida football, and I don't know, Tyler. I've certainly rooted against the Bears technically, but I don't know. It's a little different for college football, and yeah, as much as you want him gone, I think you are kind of rooting for him, to lose. But I don't know. You still want to see Lagway do some things because I don't know. I would think he's going to stay at Florida, or they're going to be able to generate the money to keep him at Florida. So don't want him throwing 5 picks like he did last week.
I rooted against the Falcons at the end of the Dan Quinn era because I could see that wasn't going anywhere. So not a foreign thing. And again, Florida's shown me nothing in this is being the 4th year of Billy Napier, that makes me think they're going to suddenly elevate themselves to a championship level, which is what the standard down there in Florida is, right? Like they've recruited well. They've got a lot of talent on that roster. DJ Lagway was one of the, most promising quarterbacks going into this year, and he just threw 5 picks last week against LSU. Like, it feels like you're just kind of in this death spiral of, okay, get on the hot seat, win a game or two, get off the hot seat, go back to mediocrity. Get back on the hot seat again, win a couple games, and then go back to mediocrity. Like, if I'm a Florida fan, I don't want to continue to live that existence with Sunbelt Billy. I saw somebody calls him Coach Peanut, apparently, on the message boards. I don't know if that's a nickname for him or not, but I think most fans are ready for this ride to be over.
Yeah, absolutely. The Fire Billy chance walking out of the Swamp against USF was not a good feeling for this fan base, I'm sure. They expect national championships. They've got them on the walls in the Swamp for a reason. So, yeah, the expectation's certainly high there in Florida. And I didn't really expect the whole Billy Napier thing him to be the guy, right? Like, I think you kind of need a little bit of a lunatic down there in Gainesville to kind of control things and run it, their way. Like, right, you look at Urban Meyer, you look at Steve Spurrier, those guys are different, right? They're just different human beings. There's some about them that runs a program differently, right? So I don't know. Billy Napier was kind of cookie cutter when he got the job. I didn't really have much hope for him there. I know Jay Phillips thinks that Brian Kelly's going to win Jay and Terry think Brian Kelly's going to win a national championship at LSU. I don't know. I mean, this is the year to do it for BK, or else I would think he's on the hot seat down at LSU, and we're having this same conversation about BK next year.
I will say this real quickly before we move on from Florida and Miami. That's a much better Miami team. However, Mario Cristobal has a track record of losing games to teams he has no business losing to. Georgia Tech last year, they've lost to, when he was at Oregon, Stanford, and Arizona State, teams that had no business beating those good Oregon teams. So it's not out of the realm of possibility. I don't think it's going to happen, but this would be a classic Mario Cristobal letdown game if they did lose to Florida tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I don't know. I feel like this Miami team Miami as of late has been a classic letdown team, like a blue blood in college football, most definitely in the way that they're able to recruit and generate money for some of these players. But I don't know. I could say, I mean, we're due for a Miami letdown game and also a Carson Beck letdown game. And as you mentioned, a Mario Cristobal letdown game. So this would be the one to do it. And I don't know if Florida fan, like if you win this one, like I don't know if you're happy or not. Like we were saying, but I don't know, Tyler. Rough situations down there in the swamp.
One of the many games that is the focal point of college football week number 4. We'll get back into South Carolina, Missouri, and discuss what the Gamecocks need to do against this tricky Missouri Tigers team coming up as we start hour number 2. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. Hour number 3. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic for South Carolina. It's our Ed and Joe Machica along with you here on your Football Friday on the Game. Of course, our main focus is South Carolina and Missouri coming up tomorrow. By the way, Gamecocks game day with myself and Elijah Campbell kicking things off tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock. We'll be live from O'Hara's out in Lexington, leading you up to network pregame coverage starting at 4. You can then either come hang out with me at O'Hara's in Lexington for the watch party from 7 until 10, 10:30, however long the game ends up going. Or, cool option here, we also have the first ever watch party contest. A lot of variation on, I don't know where my voice came from there, the first ever watch party on the 107.5 The Game YouTube channel. So Elijah, Preston, Jen, whoever else may come by and hang out, going to be watching the game on our YouTube channel, live reacting, breaking things down. Preston's probably going to break out his football hands. He may be pacing back and forth if it's a tight game, but that'll be a lot of fun that you can watch tomorrow on our YouTube channel. Or, again, come hang out with me at O'Hara's out in Lexington to watch the game live as well. So should be a lot of fun. And, man, I really hope we have a good game tomorrow because my thoughts on this have varied quite a bit as the week has gone along, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Go check out the guys tomorrow. Yeah, you and Elijah really doing a lot of fun stuff. Super fun. The watch party should be a lot of fun. Excited to check that out. First time I've been watching the studio kind of build as we've been coming in these last couple weeks. So super exciting stuff. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster of emotions. Plenty of things to talk about. And the lead up into that game, Tyler, we'll probably get that final injury report, or we'll be waiting on it at that point. And so it's a lot of exciting stuff leading up to the game. And yeah, a lot of emotions going into this one. Who knows, how South Carolina is going to play after last week, and with the health of Lenore Sellers as well, probable again this week. So we'll have to see how it goes, Tyler. But yeah, roller coaster of emotions this week for sure. And
with Sellers being probable, that tells me outside of him waking up just feeling terrible tomorrow, then he should be okay to play. Again, it's not 100%, but we break it up by like percentages, right? If you're out, you got a 0% chance playing. If you're doubtful, you're at a 25% chance of playing. If you're questionable, you're 50-50. If you're probable, you're 75%. And if you're not on the injury report, well, guess what? You're going to be playing then. So right. we've at least gotten Sellers into that 75-ish% range. And again, we got another report coming up tonight that could just tell us at that point that he's good to go, or maybe you wait until the one tomorrow. But I'd be very surprised if Sellers is not the one starting this game tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. The probable upgrade, good news for the South Carolina fan base and the South Carolina team. I think that everyone obviously likes your chances a little bit better with 16 at the helm, and not to slight on anything Luke Doty's capable of doing, but again, such a big question mark with a tricky injury like a concussion too. You would expect him to, or I'll give all credit to this medical staff for making sure that he's good and cleared and ready to go. And obviously, still a little ways to go, but. Yeah, all expectations and all roads leading to 16 being under center.
I think if you asked Luke Doty, who gives you the better chance to win, he would say Lenore Sellers too. Like, it's not a secret, right?
Yeah, and then, Doty gets to do his thing too, right? He gets to be the leader. He gets to be the voice on the sideline, right? Do what he's doing for this football team, what he's so good at doing for this football team. So, yeah, I would agree. I think Doty would agree as well, and everyone around college football really, expecting a big week out of 16 too, bounce back week for sure.
We're still early on in the Mike Shula era for this offense, but to say it's gone not the way people have wanted, I think would be a vast understatement. This team's not been able to eclipse 17 offensive points in 4 games that Shula's now been calling plays. However, I have full confidence they can run right down the field and score a touchdown on that first drive because they did that in the 2 of the first 3 games so far this year. And we know Shula, very good with the scripts. It's what happens after that where Carolina runs into problems. And, Dave, this is going to be cut number 5 here. Here is Coach Beamer last night on Carolina Calls talking about the need to be better after the scripted drives are over with.
Yeah, no, it's something that we need to be better at, continue to be good on the opening drive, which we, have a plan for how we're going to start the game, not just on the opening drive, but the initial plays that we really like that we want to get to, and we've certainly been really good on opening drives. So has Missouri. I think they've scored a touchdown on every opening drive this year, so that'll be something to watch in the first quarter for sure. But we've got to be able to continue to get better, and I feel like we we did the other night. The second drive, we were right back down the field, too. And then that's when we had the interception, unfortunately, down there in the red zone. But we had 2 good drives, and then we had a poor third drive, which was more self-inflicted. And then the end of the half was the 2-minute drive where we missed a field goal. So really, 3 out of our 4 drives, we were in scoring range and only got, 7 points out of it. That's where we've got to be better. But it's certainly something that we've talked about, that not just being good on the opening drive and efficient, but carrying that on and only getting better and continuing to call our best stuff over and over again.
And he's right. Again, they went down the field, scored a touchdown on the opening drive, looked great. You had a bootleg, you had a couple Sellers runs, everything that you wanted to see out of the offense. And as the week has gone along and we've been able to take a different look at this, he is right as well. The offense was at least moving the ball throughout the first half. They only got those 4 possessions, but you're driving to score when Sellers threw an interception, when, how often this happens, a nose tackle drops into coverage, and Sellers obviously made the wrong read there, where he could have had Jordan Dingle in the end zone for a touchdown. And then, you had the one where procedurally you just kept screwing up with a bad snap, penalties, and all that kind of stuff to put you in a 3rd and 33, which is next to impossible to pick up more often than not. And then we only got 1 more play of Sellers after that, but the offense under Luke Doty was able to drive at least into field goal range before Mason Love didn't end up missing it there. So you at least saw elements of the offense showing its ability to move the ball more consistently. Now you just got to finish drives. That was the biggest thing last week with your 4 turnovers. You couldn't finish drives, couple turnovers on downs as well. And if you don't finish drives against a team like Missouri that's going to keep the ball for a long time, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. You're going to need to finish drives, and you're going to need to, keep your defense off the field as much as possible, because they are going to be on the field as much as possible if Missouri has their way. Their offense is known for dragging out drives, so as much as this offense needs to, score points and do all that, I mean, it's half the battle when it comes to keeping your defense off the field, keeping them well rested as well. So you need to find success on offense. It's pivotal, not just for the success of themselves, but also, again, like I said, for that defense to get a little break.
And you're going to need other guys in this offense to step up in various ways. Like we saw good things out of Faison last week, where you got to run the ball consistently. And that was the first game where he took pretty much all the carries for running backs. I think Attaway had maybe 1 or 2, and apparently he was a little bit nicked up in that game as well. But Faison, I think, established himself as RB1, made some great moves, made some guys miss, the kind of stuff we expect out of him. So if he could have a big game, that would help out Lenore Sellers a lot. Obviously, receivers/tight ends, get yourself open. When you do get the ball, make guys miss, get the ball out in space and get some yards after the catch to take some of the pressure off Sellers. Because, again, you got a guy that may not be going into this game 100%, that, has not looked the same as he did a year ago, and there's a lot of factors for that, as we've talked about this week. But I have no doubt that if his other teammates can pick him up on offense, it can be a good night for him.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I would expect Shula to open up the playbook a little bit more. I mean, it's been the one thing this fan base has been clamoring for. I don't necessarily know if he does it with the quarterback, again, depending on his health. Like, do you really want to run him in a situation, where his head could get dinged up again? I don't know. This is a big enough football game where, you have to toe that line. And then also, too, open up the playbook. Give it to your other playmakers out in space, right? I want to see them get, creative with Harbor, right? We've seen him on a little bit on the, in motion with a little bit of that Debo action. I'd like to see that, right? And then also, as you mentioned, this run game needs to be, really, really good to help out Lenore Sellers and the rest of this offense. Good and consistent running in between the tackles and whatnot.
And for Carolina, do better on third downs, right? We talked about the prospect earlier when it came to Missouri and how good that they were on third downs. And once again, this was a story of the team for a lot of last year. Carolina struggling on third downs themselves. Once again last week, your average down and distance on third down was over 9 yards. I mentioned that 3rd and 33 earlier. That certainly didn't help. And you once again only completed a third of your third downs, going 4 for 12 out there. And with how valuable every possession is going to be for a team that holds the ball for as long as Missouri does, you don't know how many drives you're going to get. And if you're consistently failing on third downs, punting it back to them, or whatever it may be, you could find yourself in a hole after only a couple drives and not having a ton of time to dig out of it. So, Carolina, again, we talk about the same thing with Missouri. keeping them back on first and second down. Carolina's got to win first and second down, get some 2-3 yards here and there, and put yourself in situations where you can convert 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 4s. Because when you're going 8, 9, 10 every single time, it's not impossible, but I don't like your chances.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Right. Again, the South Carolina offense needs to show more life. Plain and simple, first, second down, third down, and, executing, right, and, converting and not pinning yourself back in your own territory, punting to where essentially midfield or shortly back into your opponent's territory, right? You need long, sustained drives, and, if you're going to have to punt, you'd like them to punt the ball, deep, pin him deep, give Mason Love as much room that he can, take, and then also let him bomb the thing way downfield. So, you need success, and again, like we kind of mentioned too, you need to keep South Carolina's defense, off the field and well rested, because they're going to need everything that they can get to contain this Missouri offense.
And I really, 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 really hope that South Carolina has gone back to the fundamentals when it comes to tackling this week, because that was such a struggle a week ago. And if you miss, as I said earlier, if you tell me this team's going to miss 10 tackles tomorrow, I can go ahead and tell you how this game's going to go. You can't let that kind of thing happen against a team that is so good at yards after contact like Missouri is.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Again, luckily for this defense, it's things that you can fix, right? The ferocity and the energy is still there in this defense, but you didn't look good against Vanderbilt. Luckily, you can change that. Wrapping up, they were in good spots against Vanderbilt. They were in the right position to make the plays. They just didn't wrap up. So it's a couple things that you just need to tune up, a little bit more attention to detail, and, just keep it staying within yourself. We've been talking about Dylan Stewart all day. Can't let the frustrations get to you, right? Let your play do the talking, and let the refs call this one even, right? I think if you do your best to try to get in the backfield and make stops, right? Like this is a big enough game to where they'll have your back too.
Yeah, no, they absolutely will. And again, you go up against a head coach in Eli Drinkwitz that's had South Carolina's number. Let's not be, let's not lie about it here. Last year was the first time that he ever lost to the Gamecocks, and that was, when he had to orchestrate a last-minute, drive down the field to score that touchdown there. Like, there's just something about Eli Drinkwitz where he gets the better of South Carolina more often than not, even in situations where maybe you feel like he didn't have the better team. Though right now I'd say you're looking at these two teams as being pretty even. Como's been a house of horrors for Carolina many times over the years. Again, it seems like the odds are stacked against you, but as we give credit to them all the time, this is when Beamer teams, for whatever reason, when they are the hunter instead of the hunted, play their best football, and that's what you're going to need tomorrow night to beat Eli Drinkwitz's crew.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Discipline and focused football is what you want to see out of this South Carolina crew. It helps having 16 back again, especially after a loss like that. You can flush a lot of the hype, and as we've seen of Beamer teams in the past, like we've been talking about all week, Tyler, when everyone is starting to doubt this team, they play their best, and, plenty of reasons to doubt them after their performances against Vanderbilt. So, big game up on the road, long road trip too. So it's another reason to stay focused. You're traveling a bunch, and stay tuned in, stay locked into, your routine and habits, to be able to perform the best that you can. So big football game up there in Como. And again, disciplined, focused football is what you want to see out of South Carolina. And then you got to muck it up, man, knock them off their own game at their own place.
We'll give our final thoughts and predictions coming up at the end of the hour. But up next, it is Friday. Time to talk some high school football with our guy Chris Deering, as he tells us what's going on around the state of South Carolina on the high school gridiron. That's coming up next. Halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina on your Football Friday on the Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. It's all right hanging out with you here, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, on your Football Friday on the Game, as we do each and every Friday at 1:15. Time to talk some high school football with our guy, Chris Deering. Joining me now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. Chris, appreciate the time as always. How we doing today, man?
I'm doing great, Tyler. It's been a busy week. Had a one game last night here in the Midlands that I was able to get over to. York came down I-77 and knocked off Dreher 35-28. Really entertaining game. Really impressed with the Dreher running back, B.J. Mack. He ran for 222 yards, and he was basically their whole offense. Dreher got down 28-6, came back and tied it at 28, and then York scored late in the third quarter for the winning touchdown. And late in the game, got an interception at the goal line to hold off Dreher. So really entertaining game, and I expect a lot more of the same tonight.
A lot of interesting games going on around the state. We'll dive into these here. First off, talking about South Point taking on AC Flora. South Point had a bit of a comeback week, a win last weekend against Northwestern, and AC Flora has only allowed 12 total points in their last three contests, and you're talking about a matchup between a couple of highly ranked teams in their respective regions here.
Yeah, this is obviously probably the game of the night in the state, not just here in the Midlands. Like I said, South Point number 1 in 4A, AC Flora number 4. They played very well. I think this is a big step up in competition for AC Flora tonight than what they've seen previously. But this could be an entertaining game. You know, you got 2 South Carolina commits on the South Point team. The Jazavion Currents, and he's an athlete right now. He plays quarterback, plays defensive back. He does a little bit of everything for him. And then Anthony Baxter, an offensive lineman. You know, Currents, he made the switch to quarterback probably game 2. Might have played a little bit in game 1. Game 2, he probably took over the quarterback spot and has played well. He's done really well. And beating that Northwestern team was big for them last week. You know, that's a big rival up there in the Rock Hill area. And they were able to knock off Northwestern, which I didn't think anybody would do in the regular season, but that they were able to do it. And now they get an AC Flora team that's hungry, that's been, like I say, hitting on all cylinders. Roper Winsky, their quarterback, I would call him probably one of the top 3 to 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the state right now with the way he's playing. He's over 1,000 yards for the season. He's got a lot of weapons at wide receiver. That's going to be an interesting matchup with the skill position people tonight. That's where I'm going. Again, going back over to Memorial Stadium on Rosewood Drive. That's going to be a really entertaining game, and I think it's going to be a big crowd and sort of a playoff atmosphere here in late September. And this is a region game. Region play is starting, and I think things sort of ramp up a little bit extra when region play starts.
And next, let's take a look at Westwood, who's coming in on 3 straight wins, taking on Blythewood, who had a bounce-back win last weekend against Keenan.
Yeah, this is the Battle of the Axe, they call it out in the Blythewood area. 2 teams that I think are, you know, still trying to find their identity a little bit. But I think this is going to be another entertaining game. Last year was a 7-0 Westwood win. I remember getting stats from that game, that a lot of defensive stats from that game, not a lot of offense in it. But this year, you know, a different cast of characters. James Vesey, the quarterback for Blythewood, he's played really well. And, you know, he was sort of an unexpected starter coming into the season. The guy I think they had, you know, set in that position, Johnny Collins was a returning starter, and he decided to give up football to play baseball only. And so they had to scramble and get a quarterback, and he's played really well. And then Westwood is, you know, got a new coach, and I think that's sort of turned that program around a little bit. A really good running attack over there at Westwood. So, again, I expect this one to be another low-scoring game. I don't expect a lot of points in this one, but it should be really entertaining. With, again, they call this game the Battle of the Axe. 2 teams that have played each other, I think, now 10 or 11 times, and it's been close every time, and the series is close as well.
We move on now to, again, talking to Chris Deering about high school football and AAA Heat and Air phone lines. Move now to Orangeburg Wilkinson taking on Keenan. And you were telling me earlier there's some controversy surrounding some quarterbacks, not only with Keenan, but also Ridgeview as well.
Yeah, we could maybe dance around this one a little bit, but I will tell you what I know and what I think might happen here. So going back to South Point, they started the year with a returning quarterback that played last year, played really well for them last year. They decided, again, like I said, game one, game two, to go in a different direction and decided to put Currents in at quarterback. And the kid that was there last year, he decided it was probably in his best interest to transfer, and they did that. Mid-year transfers is not something we've seen and on the high school level ever. And I've been doing this 30-plus years. I'm getting close to 40, and I don't remember a mid-year transfer, but maybe one or two times. And it was legitimate. A kid moved in from out of state or from somewhere else, just not seeing mid-year transfers like this. But the quarterback that was at South Point decided to transfer. He is now at Keenan. The rule is if you transfer during the season, you have to sit out 22 calendar days, I think it is. And he's close to that point. He's not quite there yet, but he's getting there. And it'll be interesting to see what happens tonight. I've heard some stuff during the week. There's a chance he plays tonight, and if he does play, I don't know where that puts Keenan as far as thinking about the South Carolina High School League rules. It's going to be interesting. I will tell you, for the Prep Red Zone, the site that I work for, and we got 7 reporters across the state. We do have a guy going to Keenan tonight to cover that game, so we will have we will have the story hopefully before anybody else if he does play, and it's going to be. Again, it might be some legal things coming up down the road. I know there's probably going to be some appeals and other things, and you just won't hear the last of this one. The other quarterback that transferred from Gaffney to Ridgeview was an Arkansas commit. He decommitted from Arkansas yesterday. So we're not talking about quarterbacks that are not, talented. These are talented guys making moves in the middle of the season. And it's, again, going to be interesting to see how this all plays out and where it ends up with the high school league going forward.
About 2 more minutes here with Chris Deering on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines, talking some high school football. We'll slide in one more game here. Got Dutch Fork, who dominated Gray a week ago, taking on Oceanside, who's coming off back-to-back wins after starting the season 0-2.
Yeah, you got a couple of defending state champions here. Dutch Fork, obviously, in Class 5A. Division I, and Oceanside won 3A last year. The 2 teams played last year, and it was not close. Dutch Fork sort of routed Oceanside 51-0. But Oceanside's probably got, again, we were talking about Ripper Winsky, one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the state, I would say, in Aiden Menevian, and he's really talented. I know that Oceanside team last year didn't feel like they played their best against Dutch Fork and want to play a little bit better this year. And Dutch Fork has had some close games. Oceanside has played a really tough schedule. They played a state champion, I think, out of Georgia. They've not shied away from playing, some bigger schools, and that's going to pay off for them when they get to their 3A schedule. This is their last of their non-region games. So I expect this one to be. It won't be 51-0 again. I don't believe. I expect this one to be a little bit closer, and seeing how Dutch Fork handles things. And I'm still high on this Dutch Fork defense. Jaden Worth, a junior, he's got offers from a lot of people, a lot of Power 4 schools. I think South Carolina's among them, and then Julian Walker, the kid that South Carolina is trying to flip from Michigan. I know he took a visit to South Carolina the last 2 weekends, I believe. They lead that defense. They have about half of the sacks that Dutch Fork has. So talented teams on both sides. I think it's going to be closer, but I do think Dutch Fork wins this one again in a battle of former state champions.
Should be another fun week across high school football, Chris. We appreciate it, and we'll tell you, I believe we should have Bill Gunner back in here to talk some football with you next week as well. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, I heard that. I talked to Bill a little bit this week, so looking forward to having him back. And, best wishes for him for another still speedy recovery.
Absolutely. Chris, appreciate it as always. Talk to you next week.
All right, thanks, Tyler. You have a great weekend.
You too. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Joe and I will dive back into other games happening around college football in week number 4 coming up next as your Friday rolls along here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika hanging out with you on your Football Friday here on The Game. Reminder, you can always sign up for the Loyola Lisa Special Teams Touchdown Contest on our website, 1075thegame.com, if you've not already, because, hey, like Bakari Swain returns another punt return for a touchdown tomorrow, you can win $200, and you don't want to miss out on that. So again, go online to 1075thegame.com and register for the Loyola Lisa Special Teams Contest, and hope that the Gamecocks can get another special team score like they've done 3 times so far this year. Joe, it's been an interesting week for FBS teams in the Palmetto State, namely South Carolina and Clemson. We obviously went through the range of emotions with Carolina's loss, now looking ahead to your first road test against Missouri. I think they may have it a little bit rougher in the upstate when it comes to Clemson, who are now 1-2, under 500, 0-1 in conference play, and needing to get things back on the right track before they fall out of contention in the ACC and thus fall out of contention for a shot at the college football playoff.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. We heard the rant from Dabo earlier this week. Did not sound like a happy camper up there in the upstate, and if they're tired of winning up there, they can run them out of town. When you're saying that, things are not good. But again, when Dabo Sweeney's teams have their backs up against the wall, they tend to produce some good football. But although there's as of recent years, I mean, they haven't been as of the level that they've, or Dabo has, the heights that Dabo's gotten them to. But again, I think this year, it's a test year, right, if you will, to see what's actually going to happen in this, I guess, second generation of Dabo. And, if this is going to be, a crash and burn and we see the end of Dabo and Clemson, or if he's going to find a way, like he always seems to, get things right back on track and have the Tigers again competing for the college football playoff by the end of the year somehow.
Well, in the same week that he went on his famous rant from the other day, where he once again reminded people of all of his accomplishments since he's been at Clemson, he also talked about having to build his team's confidence back up after a 1-2 start.
That's a huge part. I mean, it's a huge part because, again, of what I just said. I mean, they're just, everything's bad, right? You lose a game like at Clemson and, fire everybody. All your coaches stink. Everybody's stupid. They don't know what they're doing. All the players are bad. I mean, that's just the world they live in. And so, and then you have a gut punch like we had the other day. And, it's a huge part of what we have to do as coaches. I mean, it's always a part of it.
They have to put together a full game, right? Because in 3 games, they got out physical in the second half against LSU. They didn't really get off the bus in the first half against Troy and didn't really do the same thing last week against Georgia Tech either. And there's a reason why Clemson was so, hyped up coming into the year, because of the talent and experience they had, but they're not playing like it. And again, you're now a fourth of the way through the regular season already, trying to figure out what exactly you are. And look, I know Syracuse isn't what they were a year ago probably, but that's still a scrappy bunch that if you go out there and don't play a full game once again, you can find yourself being 1-3.
Yeah, absolutely. Credit to Fran Brown and everything he's been doing up in Syracuse. Again, in the news this week with talking about coaches poaching his players. Good attitude about that. He's the same guy that's running his team after the game. It's a gritty, scrappy team, like you said, Tyler. And certainly not a walkthrough for Clemson by any means, right? It is by no way, shape, or form, an FCS team up there in Syracuse. So, yeah, Fran Brown, tough opponent here, and definitely a must-win up there in Clemson.
One team's in a bigger must-win, though. That's the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
0-2.
0-2 to start the season. They're still ranked because, again, you lost at the last second to both Miami and Texas A&M. So those are quality losses to teams that we expect to be pretty good this upcoming year. But we talk so much about teams' margin for errors being razor thin. Notre Dame's is at 0 because, again, they're independent. They don't have a conference championship to play in December. They've got 10 more games, and they got to win all 10 of them. And right now, the way their schedule looks, Southern Cal's the only other ranked team they got, and they may not even be ranked by the time they get there. Who knows? But they can't afford to lose any more games whatsoever if they want any shot of making the 12-team playoff this year. At that point, probably as an at-large somewhere around, 9th, 10th, or 11th or something like that.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. They cannot afford a typical Notre Dame trip up. They've got an opportunity for it this weekend against Purdue. I would think they take care of Purdue at home. That's typical 3:30 kickoff there in South Bend. But yeah, I don't know. Purdue 2-1 entering this one. A bigger like Big Ten opponent, but again, not one of the better ones at that. So Notre Dame needs to obviously win this game, win out. A win over Southern Cal would be nice, especially if Southern Cal does their job and stays ranked and all that. But yeah, no, absolutely no room for error if you're Marcus Freeman and this Notre Dame football team. Absolutely none if you would like to make the college football playoff.
Perhaps the most intriguing game of the entire weekend, and I mentioned this to Brian Edwards in the last hour. If you told me 5 years ago we would care this much about Illinois and Indiana playing each other and the stakes on the line in this game, potentially, that is, I wouldn't have believed you. But we look at the way that both of these teams' schedules set up. Illinois does have to play Ohio State. Indiana still has to play Oregon and Penn State later on in the year. Both these programs could still be in position to make the playoff, even if they lose those respective games against the tougher teams of the Big Ten. But they got to win this game to put themselves ahead of the curve here. Like, you are fighting for what people might think be that fringe playoff spot if things work out the way they did for Indiana last year.
Yeah, most definitely, Tyler. Again, as we've been talking about, a lot, the Big Ten relies on playing each other, right? Because they don't really schedule a whole lot of powerful out-of-conference games. So this is a big one. I think a lot of people in Columbia are rooting for the Hoosiers in this one. And as Illinois is there's still a little beef from that bowl game with Brett Bielema and all that, and rightfully so, still testy. But I would like to see Kurt Cignetti get things going again and take down Illinois. Again, ranked 9. I think it's 9 and 19 the rankings between these two teams. So big game in Bloomington, and we'll have to see how that one goes. I think a lot of people here rooting for the Hoosiers.
And the biggest game in the SEC, Oklahoma taking on Auburn, the Jackson Arnold Bowl, if you want to call it that. Both these programs off to 3-0 starts with two head coaches that came into the year knowing they had to win to basically save their own jobs. The Jackson Arnold thing seems to be working out well for Auburn. Mateer is like a Heisman frontrunner right now for Oklahoma. So things look good. And again, for the losing team, your season's not over by any means. But, man, the winning team, 4-0 with a victory against a ranked SEC opponent, that go a long way for them this upcoming year. And I'll say, I might be kind of bored in the Oklahoma hype train a little bit because I'm starting to see what people were believing in the offseason. And if they win this game against Auburn tomorrow, that train might get even bigger.
Yeah, good consistent football. If you see it out of Oklahoma, I expect them to be rolling that Sooner bandwagon, if you will, rolling down the tracks with a lot of people jumping on it. I think if they, again, good consistent football out there in Norman. I expect John Mateer to cement. I mean, if they win this game pretty handily, I would expect him to kind of wiggle his way into New York territory, barring any trip ups. But again, it's still early. But the hype train certainly will be with Brett Venables in Oklahoma on this rebound year for sure if they win this one.
Lastly, are you a fan of Biff Poggi at all?
Yes, a little bit, even though it's Michigan and my Notre Dame roots and whatnot, and Jim Harbaugh being the one to recruit him and all that. But, yeah, I think he brings some swag to the sidelines and whatnot. But, man, it hurts me rooting for anything Michigan.
He is an interesting character, and he'll be leading Michigan for the second week in a row. They played Central Michigan last week. Nobody cared about that. But they go to Nebraska, and this is looking like a pretty good Nebraska team this year. Michigan thought this might be a cakewalk, which is why Sharon Moore decided to sit this game out. But I don't know. It's looking kind of tricky. Maybe Matt Rule and Dylan Raiola have finally got that right combination going out there in Nebraska.
Yeah, this would be the game for Rule and Raiola to win big, again, over Michigan, even though they're still kind of working their way back from the whole national championship hangovers and whatnot. But, yeah, it would be a big one for Nebraska. Again, Matt Rule, trying to bring that program, trying to kickstart it back to life.
Yeah.
They're pulling. I mean, they're trying to get it started, but, big win here against Michigan could help with that momentum as well.
Of course, our focus is South Carolina and Missouri. We'll come back, wrap up the hour, give our keys and final score predictions for tomorrow night out in Como. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave on your Football Friday here on The Game. Tyler Ed here for the Mortgage Guru, Jacob Crowder, and First Palmetto Bank. If you're looking for a mortgage guru, Jacob Crowder has got you covered. He's helped so many 107.5 The Game listeners, and he can help you too. And we at The Game personally recommend him. Owner and operator right here in the Midlands, Jacob has local decision makers, which means quick and precise processing and underwriting. If you're looking to make a move, give Jacob a call at 803-719-1005 or email him at jcrowder@firstpalmetto.com. Interest rates have stabilized as well as the local housing market, and now is a good time to buy a house. And Jacob and First Palmetto Bank have products to help home buyers. If you're considering building a home, they have no-nonsense construction loans that fit your needs as well. Again, 803-719-1005. Jacob's MLS number is 198432, and First Palmetto Bank is a member of FDIC and an equal housing lender.
Yeah, they make it pretty loud and clear what kind of team they are. Active on defense and athletic quarterback, running backs as good as there is in this league, and they brought back some receivers, and then they've added one from the portal that's a weapon for them. So they're a good team. They have played, they haven't played an SEC game yet, but they played Kansas and scored 40-plus points and played well in that game. And Louisiana, who they played last week, is typically one of the best teams in the Sun Belt. So they haven't played an SEC game, though, but they've played some good opponents and did what they needed to do. They won the game, and they looked really, really impressive doing it.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. Tyler Head, Joe Machika, Captain Dave, hanging out with you on your Football Friday. Of course, that was Coach Beamer last night on Carolina Calls, giving his thoughts and assessment of this Missouri Tigers team ahead of tomorrow night's matchup. 7 o'clock kick out there in the other Columbia as they battle for the Mayor's Cup, as ugly as that trophy may be. But, man, Joe, we've talked about this matchup 6 ways from Sunday all week long. Again, I'm nervous. I'm glad Sellers is likely going to play here. That gives you a good chance. But a lot of keys that Carolina's going to need to execute tomorrow in order to win this game.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. You're going to need to see disciplined and focused football from South Carolina. Again, Lenore Sellers expected to get the go and expected to give, everything that he's got to this football team up there in Columbia. But, yeah, you need to see focused and disciplined football. You didn't see it against Vanderbilt. You need to see it against this Missouri team because Eli Drinkwitz, finds a way to motivate his team, and he's hungry for this rivalry trophy, as ugly as it is and as dumb as the name may be because of the Mayor's Cup just being because of the 2 Columbias. Again, I think if you're South Carolina, you have to go up there and you own this game, right? You absolutely do everything that you can to drag it out and make it an ugly football game to regain momentum for your season and everything. Can't be counted out of this one.
Cliff weighs in on the Firehouse Subs text line. He says, hope the Heisman watch starts for the Norse tomorrow. I think we'll have the lead in the fourth quarter with a chance to win. I sure hope so. That would be that'd be nice. And again, Sellers' numbers have been this year. Obviously, the rushing numbers haven't been there, and he's been okay passing the football, but certainly pales in comparison to what he was doing, last year, especially at the end of the year. And God, we talked about the Missouri game from last year yesterday, and he threw for 353 and 5 touchdowns. Like, you tell me he does that tomorrow, and we're going to be cooking with some gas, that's for sure. But I think all in all, we just want to see this offense open up, right? We just want to see it be effective. And again, going back to what Beamer and Shula said earlier on in the week, it's not that they're not calling these things. It's just being read certain ways. They're obviously trying to take Sellers out of it as much as they can. And whatever advantage they need to get over them, I just really hope we can see something reminiscent of what we saw against a team like Missouri last year. Because for one, that'd be great for South Carolina. Two, that's just fun to watch, man. There's nothing more difficult than watching an offense that's struggling, and that's what we've unfortunately seen through a lot of the first 3 games this year.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to see this offense get back on track because when it is humming, it is sweet science and it is fun to watch, Tyler. And then also, goes to show you for this defense too, you'd hope that they get things back on track. They were a joy to watch in the first 2 weeks when they brought the physicality and were disciplined and flying to the football. So big opportunity to do it against Missouri. They're going to try to run the football and then open it up with Prebula. So, really, really big opportunity for this defense to make another statement and to get things back on track with the talk around them.
So real quick, I have 3 kind of keys to this game. One is no turnovers because every possession is going to be valuable. And obviously, when you give the ball to Missouri, you don't know how long it's going to be until you get it back. And you could only have so many possessions in the entire game. So you can't waste drives by giving the ball away. Tackle effectively. Again, this is a team that's going to run that outside zone, and they're going to force you to try and tackle them in space, which you struggled with last week against Vanderbilt. So that needs to be better. And offense, help your quarterback out, man. Whether it's Faison or Nick Carver or Jordan Dingle or the guys in the offensive line, Sellers needs help around him. Not that he's not capable of doing things on his own, but we've seen with, again, how much defenses are taking him out of the equation. He's going to need other guys to step up and play their best football tomorrow. And I hope we're talking about Faison running for $120 and Harbor catching, 7 balls for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns himself. That'd be a way to get yourself a great weekend in Columbia. I hope it can happen.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Again, you need these guys to go off. Again, this game, it was a great game last year. I'm expecting, the same thing this year. And, you'd like to hear of Lenore Sellers in this offense getting things back on track. Rasul Faison in this run game, getting things back on track. And then the defense playing like they always, or like this fan base and everybody around this program, like we always knew they would.
And for Coach Beamer, I know you're not listening right now because you're actually in Columbia, Missouri, or at least on your way there right now. This is when you're at your best. When we doubt you, when you're on the heels of a bad loss, this is when Carolina football plays its best, and I really hope that's going to be in the recipe for tomorrow because you need it. You can't drop 2-2 in conference play. You'd be really behind the 8 ball before even the toughest part of your schedule gets here. I really hope we get one of those magical type of games where we say, wow, where was this team a week ago?
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. I wouldn't put it past Coach Beamer and then this squad. As soon as they're counted out, it seems as if they rally behind that and have had a little bit of trouble controlling the hype. Now is your chance to get it back and show that you know what to do with it this time. So big tilt up there in Como, and we'll have to see how it goes. Tyler, hopefully we're talking about better stuff next week as Bill returns.
Joe, man, I appreciate you filling in as much as you have over these past couple weeks, past couple months, really. Again, like I said, Bill's coming back on Monday, and we'll call upon you when needed. That's for sure. Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely, Tyler. Thanks for having me as always, and appreciate you having me around the parts.
I'm going to hop out of here. Terry Ford's going to hop in for the final hour as the halftime show presented by the Men's Clinic of South Carolina rolls along on your Football Friday on the Game. Tyred here for Tilly's Warehouse, the first wine and spirit store in 5 Points in 20 years. No home game this weekend, so maybe you can't tailgate, but you can have a good time at home, taking in all the great college football action with whatever kind of beverage you can imagine, because Tilly's has got you covered. Yes, they have G4 tequila. They also have red and black vodka, which benefits the Garnet Trust, which is South Carolina's official NIL. They have High Noons. They have Sun Chase. They have Sun Surfers. Buy the case. You can also buy the ready-to-drink stuff right by the register as well. And if you mention that you heard this ad on 107.5 The Game, you can get 10% off any wine selection. Stay connected with them on Instagram and Facebook and visit their website at tillyswarehouse.com for more information and discover why Tilly's is your new must-visit spot over in 5 Points.
It's a football Friday. I just dig this song. Highly recommend the album. And Dirty Deeds, by the way. No one ever talks about the album Dirty Deeds, Dave. Very underrated. Very good. I'm a huge Bon Scott guy. What can I say? No offense, Brian Johnson. You're good. You are. You're good. You're good. But I'm a Bon Scott guy. Anyway, as I plug in my headset, Terry Ford, jumping in on the last hour of the halftime show, give Tyler a little break, a little rest, send him home. I walked in here, Dave. I said, get out of here, punk. Go home. And he looked at me and he goes, you won't get any argument from me. Honestly, look, we're not tarring roofs. Nobody's going to pretend that we're killing ourselves like physically here doing hard, heavy labor. But our boy Tyler's done some nice work here while Bill Gunner has been out. So big thumbs up to Tyler. Bill will be back on Monday, and we're happy to say that. Good to get Bill back in here. No one's happier than Tyler to get Bill back here. But Gunner will be back on Monday. Obviously, Bill's been dealing with some health stuff, and he'll continue to deal with some health stuff, but he is healthy enough and excited enough to get his butt back in here on Monday, and we're happy to have him back. All right, so we have a Football Friday. Terry Ford, we're going to go till 3, and then Jay and I in the postgame show will jump in. Missouri, South Carolina tomorrow. I've been thinking about this all week. And we've spent a week here talking about, all right, South Carolina didn't do this against Vandy, didn't do that against Vandy. You got to fix this. You got to fix that. You better do this moving forward. You better not do any more of that. And I started thinking as the week went along. I saw some of our Twitter polls. You can go to @1075 The Game and look at our Twitter polls. And I look at them up and down. Like we had the one today. @1075thegame.com. What's your prediction against the spread between South Carolina and Missouri? It's sponsored by our buddy Debo Williams, by the way, the former Gamecock. Has a Spender app, Spendher. Connects people with experts. So check it out. Debo with his app. All right, the choices were Mizzou covers the -9.5. South Carolina covers the +9.5 and loses, but does cover. 3, South Carolina wins outright. 40% said, drum roll, Dave, that Missouri will cover the 9.5. Missouri not only will win this game, but cover the number. 38% say South Carolina will win the game, and only 21% say South Carolina loses, but loses and covers. Got a couple of comments. Missouri by 3. Tutties. Missouri by 21. Or 24. Another reply, Gamecocks shocked the world. What can I say? I'm a cockeyed optimist. Get it? Get it? Get it? We also have folks, we did a Twitter poll earlier in the week about the loss to Vanderbilt and how you felt about that loss and about the season moving forward. And here's what it was. Poll question of the day. How are we feeling after the first loss of the season? It was bad. We'll bounce back. Concerned, but not panicked. Alarmed, full-on panic mode. 7% said, bad game. We'll bounce back. No big deal. 23% said concerned, not panicked. 32% full-on panic mode. And 38% alarmed. So 70% of the folks who jumped in on the poll either alarmed or in full-on panic mode. And we had about 2,600 people view it and 374 folks vote on it. So, point being is folks are concerned about losing to Vandy, and 40% of our Twitter poll people so far, we still have plenty of time to go on this thing, right now think South Carolina not only loses, but they lose by double digits. I get it. But as I watched the week unfold and heard all the conversations by fans, media, just people that are invested in one way or the other, Shane, the coordinators, the players, start thinking, wow, I've smelled this before. This is a familiar aroma. I smelled this after the Florida game in the swamp in 2022 before the Tennessee tilt. I smelled this last year before the Kentucky game in Lexington after the underwhelming opening performance against Old Dominion. I smelled this after the Ole Miss game before South Carolina had to roll to Tuscaloosa. I've smelled this before. And usually when this smell comes up, it's not a very good smell, by the way. And folks are so down on this program, and no one's giving them a chance to win. No one's giving them, obviously, a chance to even cover, or very few. Everybody's down, and the sentence is, well, if you couldn't play well against Bleep, how are you going to go beat Bleep? When all these things happen, Shane Beamer and those coaches and those players bounce back, and either bounce back with a W or bounce back with a game where they should have had a W like Alabama last year. Point is, they play really well. And I'm going to buy it. I am. I'm not going to be. I think I picked them to beat Kentucky, but I picked them to lose to Alabama, but not as close as it was. And look, let's be honest here between you and me and Dave and my laptop. South Carolina, the last 3 quarters of that game, outplayed Alabama and should have won. I absolutely fell for it after the 2022 game in Gainesville. I was like, how are you, after playing so poorly against Florida, how are you going to stay anywhere near Tennessee? Remember, that was Hendon Hooker's Tennessee. They were rolling toward a college football playoff spot. They were dog-walking everybody, right? And the Volunteers showed up at Williams-Brice and got their kicked by South Carolina. 63. Rattler and that offense hung on the Vols. We were opening up record books looking for stuff in the press box that night. So you know what? I'm going with it. I'm going with the trend of the Shane Beamer era. And I believe Will Helms said Beamer in this type of spot is 13-6 and 1 against the number, and 13-7 or 14-6 outright, one way or the other. I can't remember. But bottom line is Beamer's teams bounce back, and they play really well the next week. And a lot of the time they win the game the next week when they're in these type of situations, coming off of losses, especially off of losses where they don't play well. So I'm going to buy the Kool-Aid, man. I'm in. I think South Carolina goes to Columbia, Missouri, and plays well. And you know what? What the hell? Let's just go nutty. I think they win. Special teams will be the key. South Carolina special teams, got knocked down a bunch of notches in their efficiency ranking last week. But Missouri special teams are a mess. I mean, they're playing rock, paper, scissors on who the kicker is going to be. Give a punt return for a touchdown against Louisiana. South Carolina, last time I checked, Vakari Swain has 3 punt returns for touchdowns. Gamecocks have blocked the punt. Coverage units have been good. Obviously, return units. I mean, remember the Nick Harbor kickoff return. It wasn't a touchdown, but it was big yards. Field goal-wise, William Joyce missed one. Missed with the 49-yarder, but nailed the 45-yarder, I believe, is how it went. Gave Mason Love a try from plus 50 because he's got a big leg. Point is, South Carolina's got a huge special teams advantage on Missouri. And I'm going to go there to where there will be big plays. Besides that, whatever, tell me, Tara, how's it going to work? I just know it works. It's what Shane Beamer and those players and those coaches do after these type of losses. They just find a way, man. They find a way. The players change, but the head coach and the coaching staff pretty much stays the same, and they get these guys right after a bad week. They just do, to their credit. I'm going to go for it. I am not going to sit and, hey, got no chance against Missouri. I've been that guy before after a bad loss with South Carolina. I think they're going to play really well. And the other part of this is, too, Missouri's got a lot of fancy stats. The running back Hardy is running over everybody. I understand. I do. Bo Prabula looks like he's a real live difference maker at quarterback. The kid Coleman at wide receiver is a yak yard machine. I understand. Missouri's put up stupid numbers offensively. And defensively, they haven't given up much in 3 games. I get it. I do. Yes, you better tackle, or Hardy and Coleman will kill you. Prabula hasn't faced much heat, but the heat he has faced has turned into sacks like a quarter of the time, if you look at the numbers. Missouri does have a little bit of a weakness in pass protection in the interior of their offensive line. Their tackles are good. They have not faced a defense of this level all year. Kansas, 59th in defensive efficiency. That's the best defense they faced. That's the only Power 4 squad they faced in the border war. Kansas was up 21-6. Kansas was up in the fourth quarter, couldn't finish the deal. Yes, Missouri is a high-level offense, no doubt. And they're going to try to run the ball right down your throat or pick an orifice. But South Carolina, you look at the Vanderbilt game, Vandy ran for 3.9 yards a carry. And one of those was a 44-yard touchdown run. And you can't take that away. But despite the fact South Carolina missed 11 tackles in that game, they missed 14 all year, by the way. 11 in the Vandy game. Still, Vanderbilt only averaged 3.9 yards a carry, and a lot of that was on a 44-yard explosive touchdown run. Yes, you better tackle. That has to improve a hell of a lot, because you can't let Missouri break tackles, whether it's running backs or receivers, because they can make you pay dearly for it. But the South Carolina run defense grade is still over 90, if you look at Pro Football Focus. So to me, the key to this game, besides special teams, will be South Carolina's defensive front in the run game and linebackers, and Missouri's rush offense. That is another gigantic key to me. And I'm telling you, I don't know how it's going to happen. We've seen it happen, though, time and time again in the Shane Beamer era. When they drop a stinker, they always bounce back harsh the next week and play really, really well. And I'm going to go for it. I've watched it over the last 4 years. I'm in, Shane. I think South Carolina will go and play much better. And I'm even going to go and say they beat Missouri. I think I went 27-24 on Gamecock Central. And by the way, I am doing so poor this year. I am just the opposite of last year. I'm getting whooped. So I'm due. I'm due to have a good week is what I'm saying. I think myself and one other person are the only people on Gamecock Central's pick thing taking South Carolina. I think that's it. I think. But I am. I'm good. I'm all in, man. I've watched this for the last 4 years. They always find a way to bounce back and play a ton better. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford hanging in for Tyler. Get us up to 3 o'clock. Then Jay and I will kick the postgame show up until 6. We'll come back, hear what Shane Beamer had to say last night on Carolina Calls. That is next here on the halftime show on the game. All right, so obviously we've been yipping a lot about South Carolina and Missouri. Missouri, 9.5-point favorite last time I checked. Shane Beamer on Carolina calls. Oh, before I get to this. All right, so here's how we're rolling this baby. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock from O'Hara's. Gamecocks game day. Elijah and Tyler will jump in and take the wheel on that. I got community service to do, Dave. I'm telling you, bye. I'm a little busy. 4 o'clock, the network with Chris Miller and the crew take over. 7 o'clock, it's Todd and Tommy on the call. You can hear it right here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and our affiliate 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. If you can't get to O'Hara's for the viewing party at 7, which, we hope you can. Food's great, tons of beverages. You can register to win tickets for South Carolina Clemson. I love the fish and chips, the steelworker sandwich, French dip sauce, just everything. Bangers and mash. Go to O'Hara's, eat, drink, watch the game, have fun. If you can't, and you're sitting at home and you're going to eat and drink and watch the game and have fun, dial up our YouTube channel at The Game TV, at The Game TV Radio, I should say. And you can watch the game along with Elijah Campbell, Preston Thorne, and our pal Nick Harvey from WIS-TV. They're going to watch the game just like you are, and they're going to be commenting and talking about it on the YouTube channel, and you can participate as well, jump in the chat, and they will be riffing back and forth with you, and you can just all hang together and watch the game. It's the debut of our cool little podcast, live stream podcast studio as well. So check that out on Saturday if you would like. I think it's going to be fun. And look, it's the first one. It's a work in progress. There's going to be stuff we do. We go, okay, that was kind of cool. There's going to be stuff we go, oh, my God, we can never do that again. Or that camera angle of Elijah's nostrils. No, don't do that again. But it's going to be fun. It's our first one using our studio. Our engineer, Randy's been a genius with this thing. And if you want to do that on Saturday at 7, feel free again at The Game TV Radio. Of course, always it's sponsored by Shepherd's Glass and powered by our Buds Integrated Media. All right, so Shane Beamer last night on Carolina calls, heard here on the game in Columbia and Myrtle Beach. First of all, Shane gives us a Linares Sellers update. Let's get cut 3 there, Dave. In case you missed this, here's Shane talking about Linares.
Well, he's great. He wanted to play last Saturday night. He was right back out on the field and active and involved. He didn't practice necessarily on Sunday, but he was back out there with the team and hurt. And he's in great spirits. Again, he's a competitor, and that's what I've told him all week, that at the end of the day, like his any of our players' health is the most important thing, short-term and long-term. And Linares has been adamant since Saturday night when he wanted to play that he was playing this weekend, and hopefully that's the way it'll turn out here in the next couple days.
So Linares Sellers, in case you missed it, has been upgraded to probable. The feeling is he will play. Also on the injury, the availability report. Don't want to go too far there. Get out of our lane and call it an injury report. A starting right tackle, Casey Henry, was not listed on Wednesday's report, meaning he's available. Judge Collier, well, that's not going as well, unfortunately. For Judge Collier, Michael Smith will not play either. So Judge Collier, Michael Smith is out. Linares Sellers, Mazeo Bennett, Casey Henry looks like they will be in. So that's good news. I mean, you don't like to not have Judge Collier or Michael Smith, but you do have your starting quarterback, it feels like, and you also will have more depth at wide receiver, and you'll have your starting right tackle for a game where you need as many folks as possible to pull a win up over Missouri. Now, again, at the end of the day, what Linares Sellers do you see? We don't know. Got no clue. No idea. Could be 100% full go, just like usual. And maybe he's a guy who's well enough to play, but he's not 100% because dudes play when they're not 100%. But you're going to need an efficient and effective, explosive playmaking Linares Sellers in this football game. And I go back to the first half, the first 4 series against Vandy when Sellers was playing. First drive's a touchdown. Second drive should have been a touchdown. Really, Lenora Sellers' only mistake the whole night is missing the short post in the end zone to Daigle at tight end, or Dingle, I'm sorry, at tight end. That would have been a touchdown. Also, I believe Donovan Murphy was in the flat open. Lenore's made a bad choice and a bad read. Ended up being a pick. I mean, a defensive tackle actually caught a pass thrown to him, which very rarely happens. But that was the only mistake Lenora Sellers made all night, but that drive was really good and should have been a touchdown. Your third drive, you did move the ball a bit, and then, well, a sack on a free runner, a really bad snap, and a penalty pushed you back to third and a billion. And then on the fourth series, Lenore's hits phase on out in the flat, kind of like the hot read, because you got a free runner on a blitz, and that's the play that knocked Sellers out of the game. You were moving the ball. Sellers had run it a couple times. He made some really nice throws, especially in that 10 to 19-yard area where Lenore's he's been solid all year. I mean, again, he's only missed one throw. The interesting part, if you break down Lenora Sellers' throw chart, he's 3 out of 4 deep. He's hitting upper 50 percentile from that middle range, 10 to 19, which is solid. The struggle's been 0 to 9, which is a little weird, but that's almost been like the least efficient throwing area on the field for Lenora Sellers, but he was good at it against Vandy. So hopefully this offense was heading in the right direction, and then the starting quarterback got hurt. All right, Dave, let's get to this, too. I want to get cut 5, Dave. This is Shane Beamer on Carolina Calls last night saying, talking about the offense being better after the scripted drives. The scripted drives have been good. Virginia Tech, scripted drive, first drive, right down the field, touchdown. Against Vandy, scripted drive, first drive, right down the field, touchdown. What's going on after the scripts? That's a different conversation. Here's Shane talking about getting better after scripted drives. Again, cut 5, Dave.
Yeah, no, it's something that we need to be better at, continue to be good on the opening drive, which we, have a plan for how we're going to start the game, not just on the opening drive, but the initial plays that we really like that we want to get to, and we've certainly been really good on opening drives. So has Missouri. I think they've scored a touchdown on every opening drive this year, so that'll be something to watch in the first quarter for sure. But we've got to be able to continue to get better, and I feel like we did the other night. The second drive, we were right back down the field too, and then that's when we had the interception, unfortunately, down there in the red zone. But we had 2 good drives, and then we had a poor third drive, which was more self-inflicted, and then the end of the half was the 2-minute drive where we missed a field goal. So really 3 out of our 4 drives we were in scoring range and only got 7 points out of it. That's where we've got to be better. But it's certainly something that we've talked about, that not just being good on the opening drive and efficient, but carrying that on and only getting better and continuing to call our best stuff over and over again.
Yeah, that's been the thing, and I yap about this all the time, is play calling to me is one of the most underrated skills when we're discussing offensive coordinators. Yes, you want them to put in a system of offense that's built around the players' skills and abilities. Build the offense around what the players can do. Don't force them to do what you want them to do. B, you want to be able to obviously develop, put together plays, be fancy on the whiteboard, all that stuff. I get it. But play calling is so vital on game day. It just is, man. An elite play caller it gives the offense such an upper hand. And again, it's guys who run stuff in the late first quarter. They just ran that play in the late first quarter to set you up for another play mid-third quarter, where you're going to see that look, oh, there's that play we saw in the first quarter. Oh, no, it's not. Touchdown. It's so important. And we've seen Mike Shula put together a heck of a script. It's looked impressive, those first drives down the field against Vandy and Virginia Tech. But then it feels like as the game progresses, some of that creativity we saw early on the script isn't repeated. Like that, again, I've been bringing this up now the whole season. That bootleg. South Carolina's run that little bootleg with Lenora Sellers throwing to the tight end twice, and both times on the first drive, massive yardage. Love to see it more. Would love to. Or run something off that boot where people look, oh, there's that boot. Here goes the tight end. Oh, no, it's not. It's this instead. And bam, you get a big play. So that, just to me, that's where it's at. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford, appreciate you hanging out. More Shane. We're going to hear about Missouri from Coach Beamer next on the game. Talking South Carolina, Missouri, Tigers are 9.5-point favorites at home versus South Carolina. Shane Beamer talked about Missouri on Carolina Calls last night. Let's get a couple pops from Shane, starting off with Shane knows what kind of team that Mizzou is. That's cut one, Dave.
Yeah, they make it pretty loud and clear what kind of team they are. Active on defense and athletic quarterback, running backs as good as there is in this league, and they brought back some receivers, and then they've added one from the portal that's a weapon for them. So they're a good team. They have played, they haven't played an SEC game yet, but they played Kansas and scored 40-plus points and played well in that game. And Louisiana, who they played last week, is typically one of the best teams in the Sun Belt. So they haven't played an SEC game, though, but they've played some good opponents and did what they needed to do. They won the game, and they looked really, really impressive doing it.
And look, they're 3-0. And they have scored a ton of points on everyone. But like we said in the opening riff of the show, they have not faced a defense as good as South Carolina. They haven't faced a team as good as South Carolina. No offense to Kansas. Solid football program. Underrated band maybe in the 70s. But Kansas is not as good of a football team this year as South Carolina. Lance Leipold's done a hell of a job to resurrect the Kansas football program that was dead and buried. But they're not as good as South Carolina. Their defense, like we said, 59th in defensive efficiency in the country. South Carolina's is better than that. So we will see where this thing goes. I think it's legit to say Missouri's really played no one as of yet this year that should push them the way hopefully South Carolina can with their talent. All right, Dave, let's also get cut 4 as Shane talks about the Mizzou offense. Again, cut 4.
Yeah, they've got their system on offense, and every year it doesn't change. The personnel may, but the system they run doesn't change. A lot of respect for them and give them credit for how they do things, and they're a big challenge. The quarterback that transferred in from Penn State, they brought him in to be their quarterback, and he's really playing at a high level. They're athletic, can make all the throws, can run. A running back they returned a couple, but then they brought in a guy from Louisiana Monroe that is really, 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 really impressive. And solid receiver core, solid tight end core. But, yes, for them it starts with running the stretch play, outside zones, all the same. And they do a great job of it and know that teams are going to try and take it away, and they continue to operate efficiently trying to run it. And they did a nice job against us, their offense against our defense last year in that game. So we've got a big challenge against that offense because they've got weapons and they're operating at a really, really, really high level right now.
I mean, the numbers are filthy. Bo Pribula right now is completing over 76% of his passes, about 9 yards a pop, 7 TDs, has thrown a pick, just one. If you break down the numbers, 20-plus yards deep down the field, Pribula's hit 4 of 9. In the medium range, 13 to 23, which is solid. And under 9 yards, has missed like 3 throws. So they're cooking. He's only been under pressure as Pribula on about 26% of his dropbacks. Now, about 26% of those have ended up in sacks. But not pressured a ton, but when he does get pressured, roughly 1 out of every 4 ends up in a sack. Has been blitzed about 38%. That's a pretty good amount. But he's been killing the blitz. 82% of his passes he completes against the blitz. Whew, jeez. Ahmad Hardy has been a machine running the football for Missouri. I mean, this dude has been insane. Just insane. Averaging 8 yards a carry. Let me repeat that. 8 yards a carry. This guy's run for 463 yards, and dig this, 340 of it is after contact. That's vile. Just unreal. No, I'm sorry. Let me get that right. Yeah, that is right. 463 yards rushing, 340 after contact. He is picking up almost 6 yards a carry after contact. It's just sick. His yards are picked up mostly running between the tackles, between the center and guard. He tears it up. Also around the left side, around left end. So the interior of the defense going up against the middle of the offensive line for Missouri. Like I said earlier, I think that one big key is special teams. South Carolina has a huge advantage in special teams. That's number one. But number two, the Missouri run game versus the South Carolina run defense. Because, I know Hardy is the big name, but Jamal Roberts has run for 100 yards in a game as well. One game, both those dudes ran for 100. So that's the big thing here. And then in the passing game, you got to look out for Kevin Coleman, the Mississippi State transfer, because he tons of yak yards. Coleman plays in the slot. 90% of the time, Coleman will be in the slot. Average depth of target, how far typically they throw on the ball is 5 yards, but then he takes off and picks up a lot of yak yards. He's one of those guys. So tackling will be huge in this football game. Kevin Coleman is averaging about 7 yards per reception of yak yards. 168 yards after contact so far this year for Coleman. And in total, he has 258 yards receiving. So you missed 11 tackles against Vandy. You cannot repeat that against Missouri. You miss a tackle against Vandy, and usually it goes for a few extra yards, a first down, whatever. Miss a tackle against Missouri, it could be a touchdown. Just saying. You've got to wrap these guys up like Coleman and Hardy. And Prabula can run, but you want to obviously pressure him and throw his timing off. But Missouri is going to start and stop as a run team. Like Shane said, they're going to run what they run, and they always run it, but they execute it so well, you can't stop it. Prabula will go to the line of scrimmage. We're going to run that stretch play on 2 to the left, and you can't stop it. So you've got to, again, stay disciplined, hold edges, fill the right gaps, do your job, don't miss tackles. And Missouri will give you some eye candy, too, and some motions and all sorts of kooky stuff. But hopefully seeing it last week against Vanderbilt, even though Missouri's different, seeing it against Vanderbilt hopefully will help all the inexperienced guys who had never seen that kind of stuff before. Hopefully they'll be more disciplined this Saturday. And, of course, obviously circle back to the tackling. So that's a little bit about Missouri. Defensively, they slowed down Kansas, who's got some players, but they haven't really been tested. Hopefully South Carolina can test the Missouri defense, because you're going to have to score points to win this game. It's not going to be some 17-14 slobber knocker. You're going to have to score at least 25 to beat this crew. All right. Halftime show, Terry Ford, David Ayer will pop back. Shane talks about penalties. We'll hear what Shane says about getting those cleaned up next here on the Halftime Show in the game. All right, so we've been talking a ton, obviously, about South Carolina, Missouri this hour. We're going to get back to it. Go get Shane's thoughts on cleaning up penalties here in a second from Carolina calls last night. But where was I at? Oh, Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest. You go to 1075thegame.com and register. The pot is now up to, what, 200, I believe, Dave? Because we didn't get a special teams touchdown last week, which takes it from 100 to 200. Is my math correct, sir?
Well, yeah, 1 + 1 is usually 2.
Are you sure about that, Dave? Did you do it on the calculator or on your phone?
I had calculus in high school. Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Really? God, how awful was that?
Wasn't too bad because the teacher was always late, so we had like at least 20 minutes before the teacher showed up. They had another job or something.
You know what? Walks in, was a mechanic, walks in where it is gear from the garage. Let's do some calculus. I was working on a muffler. I brought it with me.
I had a crappy Buick I was working on this morning. It was, I tell you, it was a nightmare.
A piece of crap. All right, let's do some calculus, kids. I loved math until I got to algebra. Algebra just ruined math for me, man. I loved math, basic math. I even like those dorky 2 trains leave Chicago problems. But I got to algebra, and that crap made no sense at all. And I'm going, how am I going to use this in my life? Am I going to go to some job? Because, again, I want to go work in media. Is someone going to say, hey, man, great interview, enjoyed talking to you, loved your demo, whatever. Now I got 5 algebra problems for you to figure out real quick. If you can knock these out, we'll hire you.
Did you ever watch that show on Sunday morning on Nickelodeon years ago called The Adventures of Pete and Pete?
I heard of it, but I didn't watch it.
They get on. They couldn't figure out that get on the train leaves at 2 o'clock, and so they got on a train and timed it.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
That's pretty funny. That's actually funny. All right, Shane Beamer, Lawyer Lisa. I was talking about Lawyer Lisa. So the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams Contest is $200 this week. Not only 200, but if you go like Lawyer Lisa's Facebook page, I think it's Lawyer Lisa LLC. If you like Lawyer Lisa's Facebook page and you win, not only will you get the 200, but Lawyer Lisa will throw another 100 to you. All you got to do is like the Facebook page, and you could possibly get another 100 if you won the Special Teams Contest. So, again, go to 1075thegame.com and register. All right, Shane Beamer, talking to the media. Let's get cut 6, Dave. I'm sorry, cut 6. Cleaning up the penalties that at times have been an issue.
Yeah, we had a couple unfortunate ones the other night, and Bo's a great player, Boaz, and is only going to continue to get better. And that's not an easy position. Obviously, quarterback's a tough position, but when you're the center and you're directing traffic, you got to snap the ball and you got to block SEC defensive linemen. There's a lot going on, not to mention defenders that are on the other side of the ball screaming, move, and jumping and flinching and all that. So that's a tough job, but that's something we've got to correct. And whether it be a false start, a legal snap, they're both bad for the offense, and they're both self-inflicted. And it is frustrating for as much as we emphasize it, teach it, discipline, all that. We're clearly, not doing a great enough job of that because it's the pre-snap penalties like you're talking about. So that's something that we've looked at again this week, how we can be better at it and how we can coach it better and teach it better and hold guys accountable better for it than what we have been.
I mean, the penalties, they hurt on last Saturday, and then Boaz Stanley with the bad snap hurt. And it's self-inflicted wounds have hurt South Carolina as much as other things. But really, you just, again, it's little stuff. First of all, we've gone to this conversation. You got to be able to finish drives once you get in your opponent's territory. You've got to, as well, clean up these penalties. On defense, you got to tackle better. Got to play your assignments. Those are things, though, that can be corrected and are correctable. We'll talk more about this South Carolina-Missouri game with Jay Phillips on the postgame show coming up. Real quick, last night, Miami loses to Buffalo, and it was tough. 21-21, you're going to get the ball back. One of your rushers on a punt roughs the punter. It was legit. So now automatic first down, and Buffalo's going to go down and score the touchdown, right? Mm-hmm. And so you once again, Tua throws a big interception, a bad pick. Buffalo's kicking a field goal. Before you know it, a tie game. Bills are up by 10. Bills win. But the Dolphins played good enough to save Mike McDaniel's job, at least for this week. But Buffalo does what Buffalo does. They're now 4-0. Their defense has to get better, though. Eventually, that's going to bite them in the backside. But offensively, the Bills are clicking. It's one of the top 3 offenses in football. And Tua is just really struggled last night throwing anything over 10 yards. 3 for 11 over 10 yards last night was Tua. And part of it, he was pressured on like 43% of the dropbacks. So he was getting a lot of heat. So, but it was an interesting game last night. Kind of fun to watch on Thursday. Al Michaels stayed awake the whole time. All right, post-game show is next. Dave, nice work. Jay and I will talk to you coming up.